I am not in California. I'm at an undisclosed location, Stephen A. Smith. But
Where
we're heading into the holiday season.
Stephen A., where a lot of people vacation, but I won't say it.
All right. Okay. I just wanted to make sure he wasn't in 90-degree
Do I
weather.
look
That's
like
all
I'm
I
on
was.
vacation?
That's all I was concerned about. I just wanted to make sure he wasn't in 90-degree weather.
Okay,
Let's go.
let's get into it. Cowboys Nation, the good news is you get Ezekiel Elliott back with fresh legs, and he plans to run for 200 when a decimated Seahawks defense comes to Jerry's World. The bad news is it's a do-or-die game. The loser is out of the playoffs. Dallas is favored by 5. Stephen A., if the Cowboys are eliminated, does Dak get a pass for the season?
You know what? I don't think so. I mean, listen, the bottom line is this. I mean, when you look at Dak Prescott, you've got Ezekiel Elliott. I understand how big time he is, but last time I checked, Alfred Morris was still running the football for you, averaging about 4 yards a carry. Des Bryant is still on the team. Cole Beasley's still on the team. Jason Witten is still on the team. Terrence Williams is still on the team. The offensive line wasn't in shatters. Obviously, Tyron Smith was out for a little while, but he came back. All the requisite pieces were there. So as far as I'm concerned, there's no excuse for Dak Prescott. I like him a lot. Even remember, it's not that I hate the Cowboys. I can't stand their fan base, the most delusional, nauseating fan base in American history. It's their fans I despise, not the team itself. But I know what a stud Dak Prescott was last year. This year, he came up a bit short on far too many occasions. There is no excuse for it. I understand that Ezekiel Elliott is big time, and there's nobody like him. But it's not like with him gone, all of a sudden you have no one capable of filling the role in some capacity. If Dak Prescott is capable, as we all swore he was, that he does not get a pass if this team fails to handle its business in these last 2 games. You should win these last 2 games, whether you make the playoffs or not. You'd still end up 10-6. That would be respectable. You lose one of these last 2 games, as far as I'm concerned, that's on Dak Prescott as much as it's on anybody else, and I'm sure he'd agree with me.
If the Cowboys miss the playoffs, Dak Prescott does get a pass. I suppose if you need a pass for missing the playoffs with a 500 or better record, you really need a pass for that? You know how few quarterbacks go to the playoffs every single year? Look, Dak Prescott's a really good player. He's a really good player. But the fact of the matter is, football, NFL football, is a highly interdependent sport. There are very few players whose value is such that even when you just isolate their value, that's enough to lift a team that would otherwise not go to the playoffs to the playoffs. There's Aaron Rodgers, maybe the best who ever did it, best I've ever seen do it. There's Peyton Manning, the greatest regular season player of all time. There's Tom Brady, who's the greatest quarterback ever in terms of accomplishment, and has the greatest coach ever with him. Those are the players who go to the playoffs every year, come hell or high water. And even this year, Aaron Rodgers, injury keeps him off the field. His team doesn't make it. Look, Dak Prescott is excellent. I believe he will be better one day than he was in his rookie season. That wasn't this year, and we all know why. Number one, he didn't have his star running back. You take away the star offensive weapon from any quarterback, of course it hurts them. Number two, the offensive line was compromised heading into the season. 40% didn't return, and you could argue, well, one retired because he was getting old, the right tackle, and the left guard, he goes somewhere else, but you had a guy to fill in that slot. But we all know continuity on an offensive line is almost as important as talent. These guys have to play together to really know each other. That happens over time. And then your left tackle was compromised physically. So all these things happen, Stephen A., and as a result, the Cowboys suffered. And by the way, they didn't suffer all the way. They went 500 in Zeke's absence. And they still have a shot at the playoffs.
First of all, Mr. Mediocre, let's make sure, and I call you Mr. Mediocre because of this reason and this reason alone. On repeated occasions, you have been willing to accept mediocrity as success when it comes to certain players and certain teams. You and I emphatically disagree on that. That's where the mediocre comes from. That's why I call you Mr. Mediocre, because you accept mediocrity from some of these guys. You pick and choose when to sit there and say 500 is okay, and you know it's true. But I will say this to you, Max. We got Des Bryant. We got Jason Witten. I mentioned Terrence Williams. I mentioned Cole Beasley. I mentioned Bryce Butler as well. With Dak Prescott, we have to take into consideration the fact that, Max, did you realize that even with Ezekiel Elliott gone for 6 weeks, The Dallas Cowboys have the number 3 rushing attack in the NFL. Number 3.
Yep.
But with the pass, you're 24th. Excuse me, I got to pay attention to that. As Ezekiel Elliott is gone, you're still able to run the football relatively effectively to pose a threat to opposing teams. If Dak Prescott is that dude, you've got to be able to handle your business. The defense, we all know it's not stout. We all know with their secondary, they've been suspect, particularly when Sean Lee is off the field. For the Dallas Cowboys, for some reason, he's supposedly the second coming of Lawrence Taylor. Anytime he's out of the lineup, everything goes awry. Well, he's a good player, but damn, he ain't Lawrence Taylor.
No, he's excellent.
You should be able.
No one's Lawrence Taylor. Sean Lee is an excellent defensive player.
He's very good. I just finished saying he's very good, Max. I just said he ain't Lawrence Taylor. If you ain't willing to admit that he's Lawrence Taylor, then flow with me.
No one's Lawrence Taylor.
He ain't Lawrence. Exactly. So the point that I'm trying to make is that you should be able to do something without him. It's not like everything should fall apart. All I'm saying is you look at the bevy of weapons that they have on the offensive side of the ball. I expected more from Dak Prescott. He hasn't given it to me. It exposed the defense even more, who seems lost without Sean Lee.
Let's get into all of that. You made a good point about the rushing attack. They have competent running backs, and the offensive line got better because of continuity. They play together more as the season progressed. Still not anything, by the way, still not anything like it was the year before. But okay, fine. They did have a rushing attack. When you mention the names of the guys they have on offense, in terms of their passing game, they're name brands. But Des Bryant, to paraphrase Jay-Z on Nas, Des Bryant went from top 4 to not mentioned at all. I mean, let's be honest. No one thinks of Des Bryant anymore for good reason, as in that upper tier of receivers. And the other guys are fine. Every team has receivers like the other guys.
Yeah, but we're lamenting Des. We're lamenting Des. Be respectful to Nas. Be respectful to Nas now. Don't be respectful to Nas. Don't just throw that out there.
I am appropriating. I am appropriating.
I'm just saying.
Jay-Z's quote on Nas in the takeover.
I know.
And using it
I'm
on
just
Des.
saying.
Let's be
I'm
honest.
just saying. Be respectful because
Nas is obviously top 10.
Nas has a legacy. Des does not.
No doubt. Nas is obviously top 10, but there was a time where he was number 1. The point is that there was a time where people were arguing that Des was number 1. No one argues that anymore. Jason Witten is a name brand, and no, he doesn't get separation. Still, he can be a target and effective player. He's no longer like the elite pass-catching tight end. So you mentioned Oak, really by NFL standards, talk about mediocre. That's a middle-of-the-pack receiving core, really. So you're talking about a middle-of-the-pack receiving core, a compromised offensive line, and no defense. And Dak goes 500 without his star running back. Now, of course, you put Ezekiel Elliott in there, and that elevates everything. It's nothing we didn't already know.
Pause that argument,
Dak a good player?
Pause it. Pause it, because I got a question. When you say middle-of-the-pack receiving, Dak Prescott don't have anything to do with that? Some have made the argument, Max. I can't believe I'm about to say, because I don't feel this way, but I'm just going to echo the arguments that some have made. Some have made that passing attack might be more formidable if Tony Romo was there instead of Dak Prescott. I mean, come on now, Max. Do I get to look at Dak Prescott and say, yo, we did expect more this year. Don't do that.
I would say this. Dak Prescott last year and did not strike me as the kind of guy who is going to wow you in the passing game yet. Eventually, maybe, not yet. Think about Russell Wilson early in his career. Heavily reliant on the defense and kind of don't make mistakes.
What did you come into this season expecting from Dak? What did you come into this year expecting from Dak?
More or less what we got. If you more or less what we got, if you told me the situation on the line, Ezekiel Elliott was gonna serve the suspension, Sean Lee would go down, and you told me in those 6 games Dak would go 3-3, I'd say yeah, that sounds good.
Hold on, Max. Max, we had a discussion months ago where we were comparing Dak to Carson Wentz. It was a debate as to whether or not who would you choose. And even though you were always about Carson Wentz, you said it was a viable discussion. And then Dak fell off. There was a time when we were talking about Dak like, yo, this is that dude. What are you talking about?
That's another good point, but that's what I mean by it's a highly interdependent sport. When Dak had the O-line and Zeke, I think the majority of people are like, nah, he's better than Wentz. All of a sudden, Wentz has some pieces. He has a couple of running backs. His receivers got better. They added to that. All of a sudden, you look at Wentz, and the O-line was, okay, they lose the left tackle, which was a big deal, but the O-line played well this year. Suddenly, and with Zeke with Zeke not on the Cowboys, suddenly the argument flips, and that happens a lot in the NFL. The reason Tom Brady, for example, I consider the greatest who ever did it is largely his circumstance. I think Aaron Rodgers is better than Tom Brady, but he's not in the same circumstance as Tom Brady. That affects the way we judge these guys.
Hold on. Don't convolute or complicate the issue, Max, because we all know that it's an interdependent sport. And, I mean, don't do that, Captain Obvious. The point is that let's take, for example, and we'll discuss him later, but when we get into Jimmy Garoppolo, well, excuse me, the San Francisco 49ers had the same personnel with Beathard or Hoyer or anybody else. But Jimmy Garoppolo comes up in there, and they're 3-0. So even though we recognize the fact that other people have to step up and produce, and it is an interdependent sport, and we understand that reality, the fact is the quarterback being the most important position, understanding the onus and the responsibility that comes along with that position, has to step up and showcase. You don't get to just shove aside what he is or is not doing because you take the other personnel into consideration. We know what Dak Prescott was expected of. We know what was expected of.
I want to address that. The guys I always compared Dak to were Tom Brady and Russell Wilson. Different styles of quarterback, but in one sense similar in that early in their careers, they were game managers who were big on third down, but I didn't consider either, including Tom Brady early in his career, a team carrier. But they had the kind of personalities and the talent and the work ethic that they built themselves from game managers who were big on third down to offensive team carrying juggernauts. I mean, that's what Tom Brady is. That's what Russell Wilson is. That's what I see in Dak. So when you see he's in his second season, Stephen A. Right now, he's still a game manager who's big on third down, but he has the kind of stuff that should develop as he goes.
But you hedge in a little bit because, again, nobody's disagreeing with what we anticipate from Dak. What we're discussing is based on our expectations for this year, where he's at right now, how you feeling about him and whether or not he gets that pass. He could be a monster for years to come. But this year, he can't get a pass.
More or less. Molly, may I answer that real quick?
Real quick.
More or less. If you say more or less, it's what I expect.